Hi, BookTube. Welcome to Jackie's Literary Corner. I am Jackie, and it's time for a review. This is the Listen to Your Sister by Nina Vale. This is her debut novel. And the first thing when I started reading this, the first thing that came to mind was the show Showtime's Shameless, because the family conflict is very similar to Shameless's conflict. Although, this, of course, has a bit of a supernatural horror element to the story. So, you have the Williams family. Their dad was a drug addict, a drug dealer. I think he died, and their mom left them, and still will keep in contact with them, sending them text messages saying, "You're dead to me." So both parents suck, essentially. And they are raised by their older sister, and the older sister, Kala, is raising her two younger brothers. She has the second oldest child is Drayson Dray. He's college age, young adult age. He's already has his own place. He's got a pretty decent job. He's able to take care of himself, but he didn't keep his promise to help Kala out with raising their youngest sibling, Jamie, who is right now 16 years old. And he's been getting into a lot of trouble lately. He's essentially been living on the street, hanging out with, his friend, getting involved in protests. They are a black family. And he doesn't really listen to Kala. And Dray kind of has a better connection with him, but he's not around. He doesn't really help all that much to take care of Jamie, and kind of coddles Jamie and is like, "Oh, just let him, don't hover over him, don't try to control him, let him do what he wants, he'll figure it out," kind of mentality. And I think Jamie really likes that, appreciates that over Kala's constantly worrying about him and, constantly getting on his case about his, staying in school, getting the education he needs, staying off the streets, and coming home on time to eat dinner and, do his chores and all that. She's very much mothers him, even though she's, like, biologically his sister. And he and a group of his friends get involved in a protest, which I'm guessing is the Black Lives Matter movement related. But he ends up guarding the van, even though he was gonna originally get on out there, and this girl that was part of the group that he kind of was hooking up with, she was gonna guard the van because it was her cousin's van. But then he did something to her when he had this weird hallucination thing, and this like really creepy weird thing he saw on her, and he reacted very defensively and very badly. So now he was stuck watching the van, and all hell breaks loose. The cops show up, and everything just falls apart, and he tries to escape and get out of there. And he ends up running into this, when this cop corners him, he ends up running into this strange little girl who offers to help him out, and she proves to be really tough and a little bit unnaturally strong and very feisty, and she ends up killing the cop. And of course, Jamie, he can't tell the cops that it's a little girl, and they'll think he is the guilty party. So he takes off, goes back home, or he doesn't go home. And eventually, so Kala realizes he hasn't been home for a while and contacts Dray, and they find him, like drugged up and everything, trying to forget about what's going on. And they decide they need to leave town and end up at a abandoned Airbnb, although it looks more like the cabin looks more like the cabin from Cabin in the Woods. And finally, Kala is so exhausted and tired of this, and they're kind of frustrated with her and tired of how she is so overbearing with them and so overprotective, and of course both Dre and Jamie have seen some weird stuff, weird shit, and they have these weird encounters with these women, because as Dre also saw this young woman in a prom dress and had showed up at his place and attacked him. So they're they realize something weird's going on. They're in danger. They love Kala very much. So even though they're also frustrated with her, they want to protect her. So they try to, so the whole family breaks into this huge fight. And Kala finally snaps, kicks them out of the cabin, and they steal the car that they borrowed from a guy Kala was seeing. They take it and leave her. But then they end up getting into a car crash and end up unconscious and find themselves in the dream world where these the two women, the little girl and the woman in the prom dress, they run into them, and they run into an old lady as well, and another version of someone in college, a young woman in college who's very forceful and aggressive. And they find out that all these people, all these women that they're encountering, are versions of their sister that were were sent subconsciously by their sister to protect them. But now, since she has snapped and has let them go, they are no longer obligated to protect her brothers. So they want revenge for all the things that Kala has suppressed, all the times when they have kind of quote unquote ruined her life, and now these versions of her want revenge for that. So this was really, really, a really cool, very creepy, very psychological story, and really deals with the family issues and let me see if it says on the back. And it doesn't say what. Oh, I think I read it on a review on Goodreads after I finished reading it myself. When you turn one of your children turns into kind of the parent role, because the parents are absent. And the parents don't act like parents. They don't take their parenting role seriously, and the child is forced to grow up and become the parent, even if they're too young to be one. And what happens when you let the resentment of having to be responsible for your younger siblings build up, and how your siblings had always saw you as the older sibling, the fun person that wasn't responsible for you, have your back, but all of a sudden they have to take on a whole new role, and they're a completely different person. They become more of a parent to you. They're not seen as fun anymore. Like Dre talks about how he misses the old Kala, the Kala who used to be fun and would go crazy with them and just hang out with them. Now she's trying to corral them and make sure they don't get into trouble and take care of them and tell them and lecture them when they do, like, they misbehave or something. She's now a parental figure to them. And Dre, he's a kid himself. He's still, or he's not a kid, but he's a young man. He wants to have his own life, to be free. So, and he gets the privilege of doing that. He abandons Kala. And she is she's angry and resentful of that and frustrated that, you promised me you would help me out, and then here you are, go off living your own life. And of course, it comes into play the fact that Kala, being so young, she wasn't sure she wanted to be a parent to her younger brother. And you find out that it was Dre who convinced her and said, oh, I'll help you out. I'll help take care of him. And of course, that comes, Kala and Dre admit it, or Dre admits it, tells Jamie when they have their big blowout. And Kala at this point can't lie to him and has to admit, yeah, I didn't want you at first. And this really hurts you because he's just a kid. He just wants to be loved and taken care of. Even though he tries to be like, I'm tough and I can live on the streets and defend myself, and I don't need anybody. Deep down, he's a kid, and he does need them. He wants them to love him and to, be there for him. He wants to be able to, if he needs to run home, if he needs someplace safe to go to, then he knows, or at least he hopes, that he can run home to his sister and brother. And they're not there. And Jamie does call out Dre on the fact that, well, if Calla didn't want me, why did you not offer to take me yourself? And it's all their feelings are valid. And, Calla being frustrated because she's a young person and wants to live her life and fulfill her dreams, and she deserves that. But then, and Dre also deserves to live his life, and their situation is not fair. It's not fair that they're punished by the sins of their parents, but that's how it is. That's their situation. But it is understandable. Dre's feeling of, I'm just a kid. I can barely take care of myself. I need to get my own shit together. I'm not ready for and to fall into that comfortable position of, I'll help, but really, I can't because of this and this. He has that mentality of, he says he's there for, he understands his brother better than Calla does, but he doesn't want to take the responsibility. He doesn't want to bear that burden that Calla is more than willing, or is now more than willing to bear. She wasn't willing to bear it at first. But it was, ironically, it was Dre who convinced her, yet he doesn't want to bear it. He's a bit of a hypocrite. But I think they're both very relatable people. And, they are both just kids. And then there's Jamie, the actual kid, who, he's so young and innocent, and, he's lived on the street. He's not innocent in the way of he has seen a lot of bad shit, and he's just he is still, just a kid. And, yeah, he's tough, but he's forced to be tough. He feels like he has no choice because he lives in a world that's full of violence, and that the only way people will take you seriously is show that you're tough, that you're scary, that you can defend yourself and you can be intimidating. That's the only thing they know. That's the kind of world he lives in, so he feels like that's his only option. But it is very, I think it's really cool how they showed, and as they say in the book, it's very Jordan Peele-esque with the story and everything, taking a real world issue, particularly the issues that black people face, the racism they still experience today, and using the metaphor of this horror, which I'm surprised this horror of, I'm surprised this hasn't happened a lot sooner, where we've had more books. I mean, I am and I'm not surprised. I'm surprised and I'm not surprised. But it makes perfect sense that you would use these real life issues for all these different groups, diverse groups of people that they have to face for horror, because horror is a lot about that. Taking, exploring, using horror to explore the fears and the concerns and all the bad things that people experience, that these diverse groups experience. And, I would think it would be perfect for, a lot of these, people of color. Whether you're Middle Eastern, Black, Asian in my case. And, it makes sense that you would explore those issues through horror. And this one does deal with it. I mean, there's more focus on the family, but there is in the beginning, especially in the beginning part of the book, because with the way the cop reacts to Jamie, is a lot of really explores that, and how the cops will might automatically assume that as a black person you are guilty of a crime. And his reaction, of course, and you don't know if he can see the little girl or not. The little girl, I guess he can, because the little girl was the one who attacked him. And so maybe maybe the little girl can make herself be seen. And I think that was really cool, the idea of using, taking the literal idea of someone being fractured, taking on a literal physical form, and what you could become, what they look at. Each of these represent what the sister was, and then the old lady is what she could become. So there's a little bit of a theme of Christmas Carol in this too, like with how you see like the ghost of Christmas. It's different versions of Calla from the past, the present, and then what her future could be like. But it's her brothers who have to face these women. Eventually, Calla does have to face them a couple times. There's a couple scenes where she encounters them, but it's mostly the brothers who have to deal with them and defend themselves from these other versions of herself. The old lady that she could be, who's constantly always spends the rest of her life taking care of her brothers and being responsible for them and keeping them in line. The version that had to, experience the trauma of what their parents did to them, how their parents let this happen, and like what could, and how this built that version that was resented them, especially Dre. Like the prom version of her, when it goes after Dre, is most determined to go after Dre and punish him because it was because of him that her prom night was ruined. She was having this dance. She finally got to go to a dance for the first time, and her brother ruins that moment. And I think that's also the moment when their dad dies. I can't remember, but that might have been the moment when he died. I'm not sure. It might have come later. Because there's also, like, their dad's death. What happened the night that their dad died also plays a huge role. Especially in Dre and his subconscious. And what he's dealing with and why he has issues. Because all three of them have issues. And they're not dealing with this. But this experience, this supernatural experience, helps them realize what their issues are and maybe deal with them. And finally actually cope with them. And figure out how to resolve them, the conflict as a family, and not take the easy way or not brush it under the rug. Like, that's what this book focuses a lot on with this experience. So it was kind of a fun way to deal with, just like Jordan Peele movies like Get Out and Us, dealing with these issues, these social issues for the Black community, but through, like I said, through this horror lens. But it was really fun, very very intense. It gets pretty violent and brutal. It definitely gets very violent, very brutal of a story. So, if you're faint of heart. Let's see, what else can I say about this? It was very funny, a lot of like back and forth banter between the siblings. Like, there is a lot of lighthearted moments. There's very playful moments between them, even when they're fighting. The opening scene was definitely a very reminiscent of a scene from Shameless, because in Shameless, it's based on a British show, and the youngest boy, Carl, gets called in the principal's office because he's behaving badly, he's acting like a punk, and so they have to, the two older siblings, Fiona and Lip, have to deal with it, so they are taken to the principal's office, and there was a scene like that. This book starts out with a similar scene to that, where Jamie is acting up, and they think he has drugs, and he sells weed on the school property, and they think he's high and all that, so he's being called to the principal, and the school counselor is there, and it made me think so much of Shameless. And Shameless, there are drugs and alcohol involved in that show too, which, by the way, it's a great fun show if you like dysfunctional, messed up families, and like it has a lot of dark humor. And there are reruns on Netflix. I don't know if they're on there anymore. It does have it has 11 seasons, and I did stop by season 9. I think it was the last season I watched, because I was just exhausted with all the drama and all the and it did feel repetitive after a while. So it's a lot of the same stuff, but it is very funny. So maybe if you like dark humor and stuff, maybe you can watch all 11 seasons. But I kind of gave up because I was tired and I wanted to watch something a little more fantasy-like, or a romance or something. I wanted to watch something a little different than Shameless. So I finally gave up on that show. But it's still but that doesn't mean it's a great show. It just was a lot of the same. It eventually got to the point where it was a lot of the same stuff. But like I said, I bring it up because it reminded me so much of the situation with the Williams family, their conflict, everything. The difference is there's only 3 of them, and there's like, I can't remember, but there's a lot of kids in that family. But anyway, this was, I would be curious though what would be, since thinking of that, I'd be curious what Fiona's fractured versions of herself would be like. What would her versions be? Like, would there be a little girl version of her? Maybe a high school version of herself when she's an old lady, and like, I think that I'd be interested to see that. So, like I said, this basically, I know people don't like that when you do this, but like I said, it made me think of Shameless. So it'd be like Shameless if Jordan Peele wrote that show. That's what I feel this book would be like. Is like, with maybe like a horror element to it. I was gonna say Nightmare on Elm Street because it says nightmare, but I guess, yeah, kind of like mixed with Nightmare on Elm Street, because there is a dream-like quality of this, because they aren't in a dream world. And I guess that means Kala is Freddy Krueger at the moment. And they do reference Freddy Krueger. They make a lot of references to people in Black pop culture and movies and stuff like that. So, but anyway, this was really fun. I think it's a great read for this time of year. And like I said, I was like going by the back description, I was thinking it was going to be like, I was thinking it was going to be like Cabin in the Woods. But with the whole cabin reference and everything, and they reference it to a cabin from a horror film and everything, I was like, that's what I was expecting. But it turned out to be a completely different story, which is fine. That it was better. Like, I didn't know how they could. They even had a creepy doll moment in there, which is really funny. In fact, they kind of make fun of. That's one of the funnier moments because they make fun of the doll and everything. But yeah, so that's Listen to Your Sister by Nina Veal. And please check it out if it sounds like your kind of book. Please check it out. If not, then so I hope you liked this review, and I hope you are enjoying your reading, and I will talk to you all later. All right, bye!